Hello and welcome to the PreSales Podcast. It's your host and PreSales Collective General Manager, Chris Mabry. Today we have a fantastic guest lined up to join us, Todd Janzen. Todd brings a wealth of experience from his impressive career in PreSales, including his time at Salesforce and now as a Senior Vice President of Customer Success and Buyer Enablement at Consensus. In our conversation, we dive into the PreSales craft, influence, go-to-market, and much more. One of the standout points was Todd's focus on the stat that 83% of B2B buyers engage in self-discovery before ever even speaking to you or a sales rep. We explore Todd's unique journey into pre-sales, starting from his early days in consulting, becoming a solution engineer at Salesforce. He shared insights on how he developed innovative approaches to enhance demo environments, improve overall buyer experiences, emphasizes the need for solution engineers to unlock their full potential throughout the journey, not just in the pre-sales motion. So grab a seat and get ready. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Todd Janzen, welcome to the PreSales Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I was actually just looking back over last night from when I did my first PreSales Collective podcast, and it was almost exactly 3 years ago. I think episode 74. So really excited.
74, you were pretty new. Is that when you were at Salesforce?
Yeah, I was at Salesforce, I think right in the heart of the pandemic. And I was listening to a ton of podcasts, and it was just so novel at the time that there was a podcast for our profession. I couldn't get over it.
I remember when I joined PreSales Collective back in the early days as well, it was like, I think it was the first virtual event I went to. I was like, whoa, people are talking about this well outside of my organization. Like, I've always loved the craft of what we do. That's what I call it. It's basically like there's a pre-sales craft and then there's the products and the tech. But the craft itself of like discovery and go-to-market, I just have always nerded out on that.
I love that word craft. I use it all the time.
To kick things off, you've actually brought a figure to my attention, and it's 83%. I just want to touch on this figure first, and then we'll get into your journey and your story. So tell me what 83% is about and how it relates to demos and the world that you've gotten into now.
So Gartner has this stat that I pay very close attention to every single year, and it's been going up. Like since I first started following it, it was in the 70s, and now it's 83%. What is that stat? So 83% of the time, your B2B buyer is on their own doing self-discovery, self-research, not talking to you in the sales process, which leaves 17% of the time that you actually get to interact with that buyer. And the 17% is a little misleading because you don't own all that 17%. You own that 17% with your competitors. So depending on how many competitors are in the mix, it's a fraction of that. The reason why that stat is so important is because I often think about how many resources, how much software, how much enablement, how much money do we throw at that 17% in our businesses? And on the flip side, what are we really throwing at the 83%? And it just kind of blows my mind that all the MarTech, all the sales tech, it's all kind of gunned at the 17%. It's just fascinating. I think people are starting to become very aware and awake to this idea.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's like something I've been super passionate about, which is we know in pre-sales, we're the ones who probably own a majority of that 17% or whatever that 17% becomes after they're in the competitive market. It may even be 8%. And that's where the craft is so important. Like you have to be so good and dialed in at being in pre-sales and learning about your customer and meeting your buyer where they are. Because if they're spending 8% of that buying decision with you, like you've got to nail it.
Yeah. Something I've been saying a lot lately is the buyer wants the pre-sales, the solution, the SE genius. Yeah. They want that. And they want it from the website all the way through to renewal. They want you at all places of their journey, not just the mid-funnel, which we're kind of the masters of historically. And so what I think about a lot lately is how do we unlock your genius? How do we scale your genius? And I think that's the mindset. If I could have like one takeaway today for everyone is we need every SE, not just a few in a company, but every SE to start thinking about how do you unlock your genius? Because your buyer wants it. Yeah. You're going to give a better buying experience if you can figure that out.
That's right. And I would argue like your executive needs it just as much or even more now than ever as well.
Absolutely.
You have a really unique path into pre-sales and into your current role. Let's take a moment to break that down. Like, how did you get into your current role? What do you do today? But also, how did you get here? your job at Salesforce was really interesting.
Out of college, I went to Accenture, did the consulting thing for a while, and then had a friend that was a solution engineer. And so I learned all about that profession, like we all kind of do accidentally, and then jumped 2 feet into being an SE at Salesforce back in 2004 and just loved the job. I just felt like for the first time, it was something I was good at. I was really good at, and I could marry my engineering background, technical background with my social skills and really hone all that. So I did that for about 3.5 years. In the meantime, I was doing all kinds of scale initiatives for the company. Me and a handful of guys built this demo environment that we called the Simple Demo Org, or for those that have ever worked at Salesforce, you'll know it by the SDO, because I was so sick of going in front of customers and getting just my tail handed to me because the demo wasn't realistic. It was built for marketing. So I kind of became the caretaker of that, and I got addicted to scale. And I'm like, wow, if I can spend an hour on that, a couple times a week, I benefit all the SEs in the company. Fast forward, after about 3.5 years of being an SE, I had a napkin idea of, what if we had a group of people that just were in service of SEs that, you got to write code, send it to us. We'll write it. We'll do it better, faster, cheaper. And then that grew. We started taking on all the demo environments for the company, not just the Simple Demo Org. We started building industry environments. We eventually built a video team to make movie trailers for executives. RFP team had developers, had creative. So any high-end PowerPoint that had to go in front of our C-suite or a high-end customer, we were touching. And so really the concept there, when we called it Q branch, the concept there was, let's take the things that solution doesn't like to do, or maybe even equipped to do, like coding, and let's do it better, faster, cheaper. And that was the model. And that's basically what I did for the last 17 years there, or there almost 20 years total. And so that really shaped me. I woke up every morning thinking about the SE in the company. How can we make their lives easier? How can we make the job easier? Because the job is getting harder. I can't imagine being a frontline SE right now, especially some of these big software companies. Like, the products grow and expand like crazy, and you got to stay on top of it. And then, like you said, own your craft, keep all that stuff going. Fast forward to last year, I was talking to Garen over at Consensus. I was talking to Todd Janzen, the current CEO, and it just felt like a right next step for me. Instead of just servicing, a group of SEs at Salesforce, could I potentially be in the service of SEs globally? Right. And I saw tremendous success with the Consensus software at Salesforce. I brought it in over the last 4 years. We grew up to over 12,000 users. And here was the thing. I started getting KPIs that were unlike any KPIs I'd ever seen in pre-sales before. We started tying video views to marketing campaigns. And so next thing you know, marketing was saying oh, here's how much pipe gen we attribute to the demos the SEs have been doing. Here's my pipe maturation. Here's closed won ACV that we attribute to those videos. Here's how many deals we've closed without an SE. And they gave me a superpower. And I just thought to myself, every SE leader, every SE needs this superpower, because often our KPIs don't get us in the room at all. That was long, but I thought it was important to come back. The KPIs are what just got me super excited about this.
I mean, you may think that was a long answer, Todd, but I want 2 more conversations just unpacking all of that. I've talked to so many people recently who are kind of carving out their own Q branch or Q labs. And I've talked to individuals who want to be in service of their SE teams. Like you said, they're busier than ever. And there's so much to unpack on how did you get that done at Salesforce? That's a conversation for a different time. But I do think it's very empowering. And I would ask you to kind of write that up in a way, share that with the profession. How did you get that off the ground? I mean, Salesforce is a huge organization, and you started to influence a huge part of it. So table that conversation. I don't think you went too long. I think I want more. But on the KPI side, here's something that just keeps me up at night, which is we're already doing it. The SE teams are already doing the work. It's just, how do you get that work attached to the right things so that you can measure it? And how do you influence the right sides of the organization so that it's recognized? We know we're already doing it. And in some ways, what's empowering to me about your story is you took the genius of what's already happening and you essentially made it public and you shared it.
Chris, you nailed it. Here was the hard part 15 years ago at Q Branch, is there was no software for SEs. There was no software for us. It's all going into salespeople and marketing people, and there's nothing. So we had to build everything from scratch at Salesforce. And I think what has really unlocked this recently, to your point, is you are already doing this. You now need to find some software that helps you scale your genius. It's real simple. We have to start putting software to work.
Yeah.
And the good news is there's a ton of software starting to flood our industry, which is super awesome. I'll try not to sit here and plug Consensus the whole time because I'm a fan of our craft, but this is the call. You need to start looking at software. And we started to do that in the last 5 or 6 years when I was at QBranch, and we started to look outside of our own development team to look at what could we get off the shelf. An easy one is RFP software. I've yet to meet an SE that loves doing an RFP. There's some really awesome software out there that's going to make that job, cut it in half at least.
I talk to a lot of people who create tools, as you could imagine, and no pre-sales team wants to do RFPs. Now, we can use RFPs to our advantage to slow things down if we need to. We don't often ever want to slow things down, but sometimes you have to. I think the person who nails that just wins. That's the thing that doesn't really require the SE craft.
Yeah. So, Consensus, we think a lot about this, right? So we think about how do you unlock the SE genius? Mm-hmm. And, you'll start to hear a lot of messaging from us about we want to be a product experience platform. And so what we're saying is your genius, our platform, that's kind of the winning formula. Unlock your genius. And I'll give you a quick example. We just acquired a technology that allows you to record guided product tours or more of a sandbox experience. So if an SE took 10 minutes to record a guided experience, and then you put that on the website. Well, if you put anything on the website, marketing is going to track the what out of it. Marketing doesn't do anything without tracking every KPI. So 10 minutes on the website. Next thing you know, your team is in the business of pipe gen.
That's right.
You're in the business of lead qualification. And that took 10 minutes. And so I give that example because this is the thinking that we need to unlock. And it's not just marketing, it's the entire go-to-market. And Chris, I know you're really passionate about this. And I think you're going to unveil Playbook in New York coming up, which I'm super excited about. But how can you do those scale things that don't just affect the bid market where we're kind of stuck? I'll use that word stuck. How do you go above the funnel? How do you go top of funnel? How do you go beyond the funnel to renewal? If you took time to record some videos on upsell, cross-sell products, DS is going to use the heck out of them.
Yeah.
You're
trackable too, right? And there's KPIs attached to that video and how many people have seen it and how is it doing? And if you did 10 of them, which one's the best one?
Okay. So that is the crux of it. So you got to find some software. Yes. To scale your genius. And then you need that software to track the data and the KPIs. I've been saying this for so long. The demo world, the pre-sales world is the biggest black hole in the entire funnel when it comes to KPIs. Yeah. What do we get? Activities tracked, demo prep time.
We have some influential leaders who have really stepped into forecasting, QBR, technical wins, right? There's the Salesforce option where you can build the technical wins. And so there's a lot of, I think, forward-thinking pre-sales leaders who've gotten really good at making accurate forecasts. That's just one line. There's so many others.
To hammer it home, you need to start getting credit for it. It's the biggest elephant in the room when it comes to our profession and our craft is that we do this stuff today. We do things out of the kindness of our hearts all the time. This is not new. The challenge is we don't get credit for it. And that's what has to change.
Yeah. Raise your virtual hand if you've ever closed a deal, made a huge impact, influenced an entire sales cycle, and your name wasn't on the win wire or it wasn't in the presentation at SKO on the screen because you were in pre-sales and you weren't in sales. That's happened to me every year. And it's happened to every SE I know in their career at some point.
Yeah. We kind of have to stop waiting for the invite. We have to stop waiting and hoping for the kudos. That was my experience at Salesforce was once I got these KPIs, I went sales leader to sales leader and said, hey, here's what your peer's getting out of this. What do you think about using this tool? What do you think about training your reps? And it was a 2-minute conversation. And then the rest of it was details.
It's a no-brainer once people see it.
Yeah. So once I had those KPIs, I wielded them like a sword. I was so bold with them because they were KPIs that people cared about. Marketing paid a lot of attention to us. I mean, that was weird. It's super weird. And so all of a sudden, we're partnering with marketing. Next thing you know, they have dedicated resources for us. It was insanity. And I guess I tell that piece because what I'm talking about would be a lot easier at smaller companies. It's going to be a lot harder at the bigger companies. But I think if you have these KPIs and you have a bold SE leader, you could turn things around.
I think to your point, you have to navigate internal relationships very carefully when it comes to this, because some people will think that you're trying to take their job.
Yeah.
Oh, you're trying to come in here and take parts of our responsibilities. So I would say, like, lean into influence over ownership. Don't claim ownership over anything and just influence performance. I'm passionate about that because at my last organization, over the course of 2 years, we influenced go-to-market without tools. We would have loved to have a tool. But one thing we did is we started writing the marketing blogs. So to your point about marketing, is we had SEs write marketing blogs. It was a pain at first. Nobody wanted to do it. But we're like, we know we can write them better. We know the customer, we know product. Guess what? All the blogs we wrote were the highest performing blogs, and marketing wanted more. And then all of a sudden, to your point, that was a KPI we could bring back to leadership and say, we're influencing this organization with X.
I love that example because that could be a starting point for a lot of people.
It's a starting point, and it's so easy. It's just like, just content. It's just content generation.
And I think the flip I would ask everyone to make is, if marketing came to you and asked you about writing a blog and you were like, yeah, this sounds interesting, or, oh, I really don't have the time, but yes, I'll do it once. The second thing you need to ask is, are you tracking it?
Yeah.
Are you tracking the performance of that? And if so, can I get visibility to that data? You're not asking to like, hey, I'm going to own that pipe number or whatever. I mean, who cares who owns it, really? But if marketing came back and like, oh, we don't really track podcasts, we didn't know it's something we need to do, this may be something you don't spend time on. I got to be honest. And so that, like, 2024, like, let's make that flip and say, like, well, how are you tracking that? That is the piece that I think has really been missing.
That's a great question. So tools, techniques of expansion of influence, there's a lot of perceptions in demo tech. Back to your point, there's about, I think Gartner just said there was like 30 plus demo players.
Yeah.
The word demo, I'm going to use in air quotes because everybody, I think, has a different explanation of what a demo is. And I think that's some of the mysticism that needs to be cleared up in the market. But if you could change one common perception or misunderstanding about demo technology in general, what would it be? Because I talk to people who say, oh, I don't like demo tech because I'm the one who wants to talk to the customer. And I often have to talk to them about this. So, like, you're in the space, demystify some of this. Like, what's one of the biggest misconceptions?
The biggest misconception that I hear all the time is it's going to replace me. It's going to take my job. It's like, that's the elephant in the room. And again, I'll just go back to the buyer. Like, if that's how you think about it, you're being selfish, because your buyer wants your genius. They want you. And they want you on the website. They want you before they even hit the website. They want your genius. And so how are you sharing that with them is how I'd flip it around. And by the way, if I said 5 years ago, hey, every SE, you need to start getting on deals at the top of the funnel, you immediately think, oh, I'm going to get on calls with SDRs and BDRs. No way. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, record it with some of this technology, put it in the hands of your SDR, BDRs, put it in the hands of your marketers, because that's not where you want to be anyways. So I use this analogy a lot about Hamilton, the Broadway show, immensely popular show, but not everyone's going to fly to a major city and go see it. And so when Hamilton hit Disney Plus, more people watched Hamilton in the first 2 days on Disney Plus than they did the previous 7 years on Broadway. And that's just a great example of, let's unlock it. Let's put it on a platform that everyone can experience it, instead of just like pigeonholing everyone to like, how many people can we cram into a theater? Because that's what we do today. That's exactly what we do today. Oh, you want to see the Todd show? You want to see the Chris Mabry SE show? Well, come into the theater.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm in the process of buying a car, and I was sitting on the couch with my 2-year-old. There's not the most entertaining show on the TV for me. So I'm kind of like, all right, I got to look at some cars for a second. And I couldn't take a 30-minute sales call. I wanted to process this entire thing because I already know, I nerd out about this. I know everything about the car I want. I just want to know if it's available and how to get it. And luckily, I think the people who are doing that right are allowed me on my phone to basically purchase a vehicle, without even really talking to anybody.
I just love the car analogy because there's probably no more painful sales experience than that.
Yeah.
So it's a perfect analogy. And it is B2B software sales are also very painful. And so what I love about that is that car company, like you mentioned, they made it easy for you to do on your phone. Had they not made that easy for you to do on your phone, you would be on Reddit forums. You would be going to random sources that they don't control, hearing it from other people that may or may not be accurate, and they'd make it really hard for you. And there's a big chance you would probably go to a competitor that did it better online.
100% would. And I started down this rabbit hole on YouTube videos and in Reddit. And I started seeing a lot of opinionated content. And you think, as a buyer, it doesn't match my needs.
It goes back to the 83% we were talking about. Most car companies are throwing everything into that 17%. They're hoping you show up on the dealership and they don't want you to leave. And they're like, you can't leave, It's like an awful experience.
Yeah.
But the ones that are winning are investing in that 83%. And the same has got to be true of B2B.
Yeah. I mean, running PreSales Collective, we have a host of tools we use for all the different engagements and enablement programs. And I have people pitching to me all the time. Most of it is quite bad. The majority of inbound sort of pitches I get, I don't click on.
Yeah. Going back to your question about peeves I have about the industry, there's not a lot of SEs that have come and done what I've done and joined this software space. A lot of what you see out there in the web isn't always what matters. Like, we've confused the buyers. And that was like a big motivator for me. It's just like, wow, we kind of let marketing go wild with like coming up with the terms of this space and what matters and what doesn't matter. And one thing I've learned is that every company sells differently. Some are more leveraged on PLG, some are a hybrid, some are like pure sales-led growth. And there's different tools for those motions.
Yeah.
Some products are super, super technical. There's no interface. They're like command prompt. Okay. You're going to need a different tool for that. And so I guess I would say is there's no one size fits all today. And there's plenty of room for tech in this space. Go explore it. Go down the rabbit hole because, there's something out there for you. That I'll guarantee you. People often talk to me like, well, which is right for me? And I often just think about the buyer again. I just think about the buyer's journey. And some people think it's like they think of a single buyer. Well, no, that's not true either. There's 9 to 12 buyers in your cycle, and they all have a different journey. And that's what makes this incredibly hard. And all I would say to the audience is sometimes your buyer wants to click around on something. Sometimes they want to read something, and sometimes they want to watch something. And I think it's our job to give them all of those options. Because who am I to tell you, Chris, when you're researching a car, what medium you currently want to be in? You're going to ebb and flow between those. Like, I'm picturing myself on the couch at night. If the kids are sitting next to me on the couch, I'm not going to be watching a video because there's audio and I don't want to be rude. But if I'm by myself, I'm going to be in a video mode. That's how we need to think about things through the buyer's lens.
And I think like there are a lot of options. And to your point, marketing has really ran, I think, like a pre-sales story. And coming from the space and serving pre-sales for so many years, I bet that it's quite refreshing to be able to influence that. Because sometimes if I get pitched pre-sales tools, I'm reading it and I'm thinking this doesn't actually land with the pre-sales problem, but maybe it's a sales problem it's solving. It's really confused a lot of people.
Yeah. Sometimes you see competitors just say like, buyers only want this. This is all that matters. And that's fine, right? I will say, as you get up into the C-suite, they're probably not going to read your stuff or click around in your stuff. They have a short attention span. And they're probably going to watch something. And what's interesting, just a stat that we have that we pay very close attention to is most C-suite executives watch our videos, our video technology. They watch it Saturday morning at 9 a.m.
Wow.
And the reason for that, and you're probably no different, and I'm no different, is you've been through a busy work week. You've been back-to-back meetings. And now it's your time to open up the laptop and catch up a bit.
I don't even want to admit it, but in some ways, being an operator, you have to unblock everybody. And this is important for people who are selling into the C-suite, is like your job primarily Monday through Friday, days and even into the evenings, is to unblock the rest of the organization so that they can do the great work they're there to do. Come Saturday, sometimes you wake up and you think, okay, I've got some tactical things to do. I have decisions to make. And right now my Slack is quiet enough and I've already gone through the morning routines. I've already gone to the gym, done whatever I needed to do. It's exactly when I would watch it.
And I'll tell you, again, not trying to put my sales hat on, just be me. I'm not going to read your 15-page PDF or presentation on Saturday morning.
No, I wouldn't either.
If it was a one-pager, maybe, right? Yeah. If it's a 60 to 90-second video, okay, that's worth my time. I can watch it at 1.5x or 2x.
I want to kind of unpack, because I think you own pre-sales and customer success. There's this big wouldn't say popular motions, but there's a conversation on like what should pre-sales leaders own. Then there's the ownership versus influence conversation, which I think works at scale. Since taking over customer success and pre-sales, I just want a couple things from you. Like one is like, what have you learned? And then the second is, how has this changed your understanding of impacting go-to-market? And there's kind of a where does pre-sales live conversation here too.
This is what I'm really excited about. So when I came to Consensus, like you said, I sat over customer success and pre-sales. And by the way, we call our pre-sales team Buyer Enablement at Consensus, very akin to the book that Garen wrote, Selling is Hard, Buying is Harder. And what's interesting is my pre-sales team is very small and they're 100% digital, meaning they don't get on calls. What they are doing right now is making digital content for the entire go-to-market. So
they're Q branch.
To some degree, they're 100% digital, and they're a little grumpy lately because 80% of their time has been spent on making marketing content over the last few weeks.
Okay. Yeah.
But this is the dream, right? So we've talked about it earlier today. I'm practicing what I preach. Like I'm experimenting with a new model of pre-sales that says we don't just build content for the middle of the funnel. We're making content for the top of the funnel all the way through to renewal. And so we're doing it, and we're doing it with a small group of people. Now, part of that's because we're a small company. Product's pretty simple. Yeah. Will the day come where I need SEs to be on calls? Absolutely. So
yeah, of course.
I don't want anyone to get the wrong perception here. But the big eye opener for me when I came in, and by the way, I have a great CS leader. His name's Alex Edwards. I'm just so grateful for him. And I'm learning a ton about CS. Oh my gosh. We all love learning new things as SEs. It's in our DNA. It's awesome and scary at the same time how much I'm having to learn. But my point is this, having CS under me, all of a sudden I had a KPI that goes in front of the board. And it doesn't just go in front of the board 4 times a year when we have our meetings. It gets sent out on a monthly basis. What is our renewal rate? What is our net retention? What is our gross revenue? And so these are 3 KPIs that our board and our investors look at like a hawk. Yeah. That is not unique to us. That is actually very common right now. A lot of venture capitalists, a lot of investors, Wall Street is really looking at that number because what happened a couple of years ago is we switched from growth mode, where Wall Street was all about growth, profit, and margin, and that's where we're at. And it was in that moment, Chris, and this is the big eye opener, that I had a seat at the table. Because guess what? I have a KPI that goes in front of the board. And I was just kind of sitting there kicking myself all these years in pre-sales, hoping, praying, wishing we could get a seat at the table. And in that moment, it was just so simple. It's like, unless you have a KPI that goes in front of Wall Street or the board, it's hard. It's really hard. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. There are some examples of pre-sales leaders in our space that have done a phenomenal job.
Of course.
But they're pretty rare.
Yeah, they're rare because they've increased the maturity of their organization and they're influencing some targeted motion. To your point on where SaaS is today, I think when SaaS became a model, I think SaaS is more of a billing model than it is mostly anything. I mean, I think people have been selling tech as a service for a long time. But if you think of the SaaS model, it was easy a couple of years ago to consider the fact that once you got a customer, you kept the customer. The cost of change was extremely hard. It was extremely high. Some of the SaaS tech was really hard to get in and out of. Think like CRMs, right?
Yeah.
Salesforce, you come from Salesforce. Like back in the day, if you were on Salesforce, you were not leaving that CRM because it was like ripping the heart out of your business. Guess what?
Yeah.
That's gotten a lot easier. As humans, we've gotten a lot more comfortable with change management as well. I think we're used to a lot more change. And so what's becoming more popular, or I would say more important, is cost of customer acquisition is getting higher. It's harder to get that buyer because 83% of their time is spent without you, and you're likely not influencing it as much as you want. And it's also extremely hard to keep that buyer because now they have all those options. And so implementing a tool along the process, let's say you save some time somewhere, that just allows you to put that time and effort into CAC or retention, right? You've got to put it somewhere.
You got it. I mean, I'm glad you talked about the climate right now. It is just hard. Every dollar is being scrutinized. Every license on the shelf is being scrutinized. And yeah, like with CRMs, and I can speak to Salesforce, this is a public stat, they have like single digit churn. It is insanity. It's so impressive, but it is really rough right now. And the thing that I'm learning about CS is the responsibility, the visibility, the skin in the game is different. And so I guess that's a good takeaway for the pre-sales group is if you want that seat, if you want that recognition, you're going to have to take more risk. You're going to have to put yourself out there more. And I hate to say it, but I think that's just the reality of things. I have a different level of stress owning the renewal number than I ever did in pre-sales.
I understand that.
And it's probably not what we want to hear. So I wouldn't have wanted to hear it. But look, I think here's the good news. There's software out there to help you do it. You said it. You're already doing it. You're already doing these things. Put it to work. Unlock your genius. Find a platform. Find some tools.
Where do you think it's going? I understand where we are today. And actually, I would say the majority, I'm just guessing here, but the majority of calls you're on are more exploration calls where people don't have any tool. Where do you think we're going in the demo space?
I think back to this part of all the logos of all the MarTech software out there.
Yeah.
And all the sales tech software out there. It's like pixelated. There's thousands, tens of thousands of vendors. And you look at our space, it's still pretty small.
Yeah, it is.
And again, like we're the biggest black hole of data when it comes to like what happens. And so I think the space is going to get big. I think the vendors that empower and enable SEs and give the data are going to rise to the top. I really think it is about the data, because once you can mine that data, everyone's going to want it. Marketing is going to want it. RevOps is going to want it. You know, some of these larger companies have like propensity to buy engines where they ingest thousands of signals around the company. And then they just spit back to the sales team. Here's what we think you could sell them. Everyone's going to want this data. And so I think it's going to get fun.
And product too. We can't forget about the fact that like PMMs are out there. They want our information, right? And if you're listening and you don't have a best friend in product marketing, make one and let them ask you questions. Because the more product marketers I meet, the more I understand that they actually want your genius more than you think. And the product team needs that data too. Like what demo is performing the best? What does our buyer want to see? What's that little toggle they're never pushing? What can we forget about and not focus on? And what do we double down on?
It's a good action item. Like go make a friend in marketing. Yeah. Go make a friend in product marketing. Go make a friend in product. Go make a friend in CS. Just start that dialogue.
Do a little structure so that it's not just a coffee chat. I get a lot of coffee chat requests. I rarely take them because I don't know what the goal of the conversation is. Right. Build a little structure of a goal. And maybe that goal is for you to just educate them on what you're seeing in the market. Always give more than you receive. Like offer that meeting at 51%. I'm going to give you 51%. I'm going to take 50% back, 49 for doing math. Always build a little structure before you set that meeting up.
I totally agree.
This is incredible. I do feel like we have a lot more to unpack, like how you design QBranch to support solution engineers, where you think the market's going, the overall impact on carving out KPIs that are likely already related to work you're doing that earn you that seat at the board is just crucial.
And I would also say, felt like I was constantly trying to make up KPIs and find a KPI that got people's attention. Let's just say it's probably not going to work. I think just like you're going to make some new friends in marketing and product marketing, go just search up what their key KPIs are and get familiar with them. And then start thinking about like, well, what can you be a part of? Because I think, you know, Wall Street overnight is not going to say, hey, there's this new KPI that all of a sudden we're paying attention to. And guess what? It's in the pre-sales world. Like,
what? Come on.
Maybe, but just get savvy.
I think everybody on Wall Street's like hyper-focused on pre-sales. I don't know what you're talking about. We're going to switch gears, Todd, to the lightning round where I'm going to ask you just a series of quick questions because we want to get to know you better. We're going to wrap up with the best way to get a hold of you. And then I think we're going to take it into the comments section because there's so much more to unpack. So the first question is, it's about pet peeves. You have been a part of SE demos for over 20 years. So what is one of your biggest pet peeves when it comes to solution engineering demos?
It's when SE don't share the big thing up front. When they don't share the big thing up front. And I often give this advice to SEs. And if you like music, and I'm not going to pretend that half this audience has probably ever heard this song before, but if you're a Led Zeppelin fan, your demo needs to be like the song Levee Breaks. There is a drum intro to Levee Breaks that just like hits you in the chest. In fact, every drummer wanted to replicate that sound after they recorded Levee Breaks. The quick story is, they were in English countryside. They couldn't get the drum kit through the door where the rest of the band was. So they had to set it up in the opening stairwell. It was 3 stories high. the echo and the reverb from that space gave the drums an incredible sound, and everyone wanted it. But that song punches you in the face when you first hear it. And so I always say your demos need to be more like levee breaks and less like Stairway to Heaven. If you listen to Stairway to Heaven, it's almost 8 minutes long, and the epic guitar solo is like 6.5 minutes in. If I didn't know there was a guitar solo at 6.5 minutes in, I'm turning that song off. I'm like, what is this? I'm not in the mood for this. And I think our customers do that a lot with demos.
Yeah, never save anything for last. When I do demo coaching and somebody goes, well, I wanted to wait till the last thing, I'm like, never do that again.
So the last thing first.
What drives you more than money?
This is a good one. I think it's a big reason why I joined Consensus, was just impact. I want to feel like the work that I'm doing is having an impact on people. I felt that with QBranch in my previous career, and with Consensus now I can take that to a bigger stage, and I think I can have an impact on our greater industry in this craft, in this profession.
Oh man, that's fun. Like real global professional impact.
Yeah.
What's your favorite movie?
I'm just going to say I love the Indiana Jones series minus Crystal Skull. I refuse to acknowledge that was even part of the same series.
Okay.
Like, I had to think about that question in the sense of, you're at home sick, you're on the couch and you're flipping the channels, and a movie comes on. Like, what do you watch every time? Like, without a doubt, anyone.
That's just one of those comfort films that just takes you somewhere else, and it's not too heavy. You don't have to do a lot of thinking, but it's entertaining.
Yeah. Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first one, he's in that cave and he's having to step on the right stone so he doesn't get shot with arrows, Take the kids to Disneyland. My son looks down and he looks at the stones. He's like, I don't know, he's like 6 or 5. And then he looks at those sides and he sees the blowholes for like where the arrows could come out. And he just starts losing it.
So awesome. I love when things are just purpose built like that for fun. The only intention is just to have a good time. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And I'm going to rewatch the Indiana Jones series because I think I've been missing out on that. So you've been around for a while. You're pretty popular. People know you. What's something people don't know about you?
I'm going to make this sound cooler than it is, but I'm the chef of the Janzen house. If I wanted to unpack that, what it really means is I'm the meal planner, the grocery shopper, the grocery mule upstairs, the food prepper, the short order cook when my kids are like, I don't like that. And so that's one of the ways I contribute back to the house. Not very exciting, but I think the bigger message here is, my wife and I try and split the responsibility of the house as much as possible. I love how Brene Brown talks about it because, people are like, are you 50-50? Is it 60-40? And she just said, it's never 50-50. There's certain days where it's 70-30 and 30-70, and every parent kind of steps up and fills different gaps. And I just love that because I like to say that we're a modern family, and like, I'm not above any job in the house. And so as much as I strap into this chair and open up the laptop every day, like when I shut the laptop, I'm schlepping kids to practice or cleaning up messes.
Love that.
Well, you name it.
Love that. What you're doing too is you're removing the decision from your partner's life when you do that. And I think the decision on what to make every single day for your family, it's one of those unknown stressors. And you're removing the decision on what do you make? Where do you go to the grocery store? How often do you go? Do you have milk? So I think that's an incredible gift.
Yeah. Maybe one thing that's a little more interesting because, that's not so interesting, but my wife and I have been married for almost 20 years, and we can both be a little alpha. We're both Sagittarius. We're 11 days apart. We can both be a little aggro and little alpha, especially if we're like packing up the car to go on a trip and we're just both being alpha. So we have this term we use. We'll look at each other and someone will say like, are you alpha today or am I alpha today? And whoever claims it, then the other one just backs off. So sometimes like, it's just really nice when she's like, no, I got the car. I'm driving. Like, you take care of work. Clearly you've got something going on. Like, okay, put it in neutral right now.
Love that. Advice from Todd. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I greatly appreciate you. What's the best way for our audience to get a hold of you?
Yeah, LinkedIn for sure. I've never found myself so much on LinkedIn than lately. So it's a great forum.
I'm the same boat. So I highly recommend our audience reach out to Todd. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I look forward to seeing you at the upcoming Demo Fest. I look forward to continuing to hear from your thought leadership. Until next time, take care.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the PreSales Podcast. It was a pleasure to have Todd Janzen with us today, sharing his insight and expertise in the world of pre-sales. We covered a lot of ground today. Todd's passion for empowering solution engineering teams, enhancing the buyer experience, it's truly inspiring. If you found value today, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review. Your feedback helps us to continue to bring insightful conversations. Reach out to Todd on LinkedIn. Join us next time. We'll explore more strategies and stories that you can use to elevate your pre-sales game. Until then, take care.